See, I think we're going. So thanks everyone for hopping on. It was a little bit of a later start. I was doing some of the prep for Tech Sales U. Did the alpha launch yesterday, and with this alpha, there's gonna be a lot of last minute updates and changes over the next couple of weeks. So appreciate everyone's patience there. But let me make sure. Let me get the chat. All right, here we go. So chat's going. It looks like these bots are going too. Playing around with this thing called Tickfinity that lets you do like these different actions and events. So like for example, if someone wants to be a subscriber,
Let's talk about something important. Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.
Looks like these are automated, so hopefully those work too. Let me double check. It looks like it should be streaming. Yeah, it's going on YouTube as well, and then Instagram. So for people that are on YouTube or Facebook, I'm going to be mostly looking at the comments on TikTok, but I do have my wife Jamil behind me. She's helping out. She'll be checking the other chats for me. So perfect. And let me get the. And I have it set up so the comments do show up under the stream, on the stream itself. So if you do want to clean it up, you can actually go ahead and you click on the bottom.
Let's talk about something important. Put
Dimitri, thanks for.
down. Coffee's for closers only.
Nice, we got a new closer. Thanks, Dimitri. Thanks for subbing. So I was gonna say the comments do show up on the screen here on the feed. So if you do click on the corner and you do a clean display or whatever, you can get rid of the comments, and it kind of makes this a little cleaner display there. And of course, this live will be posted after the fact too. If there's anything that you missed, I'm gonna be chopping these up into little clips later on. So if you don't enjoy your career in tech sales, would software development be easy to get into? Yeah, I mean, a lot of my colleagues actually, when I started off as a sales development representative, they actually didn't stay in sales. They moved into other parts of the organization. So the great thing is a lot of the skills that you learn are going to be transferable to most of the roles. Like even if you're not selling directly to customers, you're going to be selling internally one way or another. And then other thing too, guys, if you click basically if you tap on the screen, that gives me likes. And if you share, that also helps as well. Hopefully those things are going to be updating. I think that I have the share counts and like counts. Those should be going too. Hopefully. Anyway, so Dimitri, thanks again for subbing. So would you go for work-life balance or higher pay, no balance early in your career? So personally, I think first 5 years or so, that's the time to put in or hopping around companies every 1 to 2 years, because in most cases, a lot of people, you can do a solid 4 to 6 years of doing that. But then if you do it any longer than that, that's when you could potentially start burning out. So definitely better to do it when you're young. Expenses are low. If you're not married or have kids, that's the ideal situation. Especially if you're at joining an early startup, right? There's gonna be a lot of late nights, weekends. I went through that, so you can learn a lot, but if you're trying to balance other things as well, it can be a bit of a challenge there. Sales experience for 5 years, field and inbound, looking for account management positions, possible for first time in tech. Yeah, I mean it's definitely possible, especially if it's a role. If you're able to find a role or a company that's somewhat related to your prior experience. So if you worked, for example, in insurance sales or whatever, there's a lot of software companies in the insurance space. So they're selling software to other insurance companies or selling software that insurance companies use. So that type of specialized knowledge is what you would need to move into an account executive or account management role without having to do the SDR, BDR role. I'm going to try to get through every question. I likely won't be able to, but if you do subscribe, that's kind of one of the perks. I will absolutely answer your question and prioritize it. So how different is account manager from account executive? So great question. So sometimes companies don't have the distinction between these two roles, but if they do, almost always account executive is focused on like net new business, so selling into new customers, new accounts. And then account managers are focused on managing existing accounts, doing renewals and also upselling. So the day-to-day, is a bit different. Account managers aren't really prospecting like account executives are. So that's kind of like general distinction. Thanks, man. Messaged me on Discord about the SDR role for brand deals. Yeah, I did get that. I was actually just looking at your resume before I hopped on, so I will make it a priority to get back to you today. Do I see myself being an AE forever? No, personally, no. One of my things that I want to do is run my own startup. So there's a few business plans that I was working through. Not going to go ahead and actually launch that for another like 2 years or so until I've got 2 young kids, so I want to be more focused on the work-life balance aspect and running your own startup. If you're doing it well, takes up a lot of time. So I'm waiting a couple years to go ahead and get started on that. Why did I leave AWS? There's a couple of reasons, but in most cases, people leave for better opportunities. So for me, made a lot of money the prior year. I was managing 2 accounts. Those 2 accounts weren't doing so hot for this year. Was trending below quota. And that's typically what happens if you have like a really good year. Then they really adjust your quota the following year to kind of like make up for that. So it's fielding a few different opportunities, and it just ended up being a better alignment in terms of better pay, and then also just more interesting day-to-day work for me. Where do you get started? So great question. So if you want to get started in tech sales, the entry-level role is a sales development representative or business development representative. And this role, you're going to be doing basically the beginning portion of the sales process. So you're qualifying inbound and outbound leads. And you can go ahead and go on my profile. I have a Get Into Tech Sales playlist, and I kind of break down step by step, like what do you need to do to better position yourself, and what positions do you apply for, how do you find them. But you can also sign up for my free Get Into Tech Sales course that I just launched, co-partnered with Bravado. That's also in my bio, and it's we just did the alpha. We're going to be going into full release in a few weeks after we gather initial feedback. But it's a 6-week course essentially, and it breaks down what's the basics of the tech industry, how does sales fit in, what's the career path, what's the career progression. What are some of the basic skills that you need to learn to be successful in the role? How do you interview for the role? Editing your LinkedIn, editing your resume, getting referrals, interview prep, all that. So we're going to go from start to finish. There's also a Slack community that we built out for each of the cohorts. So super excited for that. So sign up for that if you're interested. And it's free. There's other like paid programs and boot camps. You don't need to pay to get into tech sales. So I'm all about helping as many people as I can there. Can SDR be inbound only? Yeah, absolutely. So in some cases, they actually will split up the role into inbound and outbound. So when they do that, you'll actually usually start off on the inbound side first because it is a bit easier. And you might do that for 6 months or 8 months, and then they move you into outbound prospecting, and then they add that onto your responsibilities. But for the most part, you'll have to do both. Yeah, and inbound is definitely easy. Outbound can be a little bit uncomfortable. Cold emailing, cold calling, but you do get used to it. You just got to practice.
It seems like a lot of people, babe, are asking what SDR role you're hiring for.
Oh, great question. Yes. So for the SDR role that I was posted, so I posted on Instagram a couple positions that I was looking to kind of like fill for my own like kind of consulting company. So one of them specifically was for like a SDR for lining up brand deals and partnerships for myself. If that's something that you're interested in, or you're interested in some of the other potential opportunities, send me an email and I'll follow up and send you kind of a short list of what I'm looking for. And if it's something that might be interesting to you, if it's something that you want to do like part-time, for example, let me know, and then you can submit your resume, and then we can talk further. Best advice for finding an SDR role that has a good path to AE. Sure. So there's a few resources that you want to look at. A really good one actually is RepView, and that's the one that I especially recommend. So I'll pull it up here. Let's see if this works here. So RepView. So RepView is like tech sales, or it's like Glassdoor, but for specifically for sales organizations. So it's free to make an account. You can actually see, like, for example, like what are like the top paying companies based on like segment. So over here, this is, you know, top paying like enterprise companies. And what you'll actually want to do when you're evaluating these companies is you can click on the company itself, and let me see, of course, maybe it won't load right now, but they do have like breakdowns in terms of like what's the, let me see, let's pull it up here. So top ranked sales organizations. So they have an overall RepView rating for each company, and then, for example, here's Auth0, Okta, and then I guess I'm not logged in on here, but they do break down the ratings. One of the sections on the rating, and you would see this here if you logged in, is actually training and development, and then career development. So one of the things I tell people to look for when you're looking at companies, look for ones that actually have like a high RepView rating. And the reason why is a company potentially can have actually a really good Glassdoor rating, but the sales organization could just absolutely be terrible, right? So that's one of those things. And it could also be the opposite. It could be a bad company for engineers, but a really good sales organization. So starting out, I recommend medium to larger public companies for the most part, with at least 100 people within their sales organization, because at that point they're going to have like dedicated sales support and sales training for their team there. If you join like a really small startup where you're like one of like the first 3 sales reps, oftentimes they're going to be expecting you to come in knowing what to do from day one, and you're not going to get that training and support. Like one of the startups that I was at almost was kind of in that situation. So it was like 4 BDRs, sales director. I joined as the lead sales engineer, and we were just focused on the enterprise deals. Sales director had like no time to do coaching and mentoring for the SDRs, and within like I think 4 months they all ended up leaving, and they didn't refill those positions because they basically needed a specific inside sales manager to manage those people and to develop their careers. So great question. Yeah. So startup versus big company as BDR. Yeah. So if that's the thing, I typically recommend startups to people who already have experience and know what they're doing in the sales role, or like you have relationships and you're going to a startup that's kind of like related to the company that you're at before. So that way you can give you a head start when you're selling, net new into net new accounts. Why you would even bother with startups? It could be that some people just enjoy the startup environment a bit more. Sometimes, like the big tech companies, there could be a lot of processes, and if it's a really big sales organization, it could be hard to feel like you're making a meaningful impact because your contribution is relatively small to the overall revenue of the company itself. So some people just vibe better with the startup environment. Potentially the upside is higher on the startup side. If you're getting a lot of stock options and you're joining, like let's say at a Series A or a Series B, you could potentially get a lot of upside. Like the one company that I was at, their first VP of sales, he wasn't at the company for almost 10 years, and they had but he left like a year into the role, and then they just raised like their seed round, and they bought out his equity stake for $9 or $10 million. So he hadn't been there for like 9 years, and because he had that equity, he got like this magical payout of almost $10 million, which you're not going to get like at a big tech company. What was the website I was on? So RepView. Oh yes, and then that's Jamil. She's my wife, and then she is graciously also helping out with the Discord. So I kind of onboarded her onto the platform. She's pretty new to it. Her background is in medicine, so very different than tech. But I've got some projects for her to kind of help out here too.
I've also listened into a lot of these, so I know his go-to answers.
Yes. But yes, so this website that I had up, let me pull it. So it's RepView, right? So full disclosure, RepView is one of my main partnerships. I've been working with them since It's been over a year at this point. And I also am an investor in RepView, so it's been great to kind of see them grow. But they're one of like the only resources out there that's really dedicated to providing transparency into sales compensation data, which is super important because oftentimes what can happen is you can get like what looks like a really good offer. Let's say a company offers you 250K on target earnings. You're currently making 200K. You're like, that seems actually pretty good. But then what happens is you come in and you realize that the quotas are totally unachievable and you're lucky to maybe get 30% of your attainment. And then you're actually going to be making less than you were at your old job, right? So those are the types of details that we're trying to like uncover with RepView. Like, what are actually the top sales organizations you want to work for? And they also have like a jobs listing as well. So a lot of great stuff, and they're constantly doing more too. I provide a lot of feedback and feature suggestions for them to add on. Like for the longest time, you couldn't actually create an account unless you had sales experience. They did add the feature right now. If you're new to sales, you can go ahead and join and view SDR, BDR data without having to contribute data yourself. So it's totally free site. The way that it works is you just have to provide ratings for your current or prior sales organizations, and you have access to everything else on there, similar to kind of how Glassdoor does it. You work in mortgage sales with no experience. What are the chances of landing a job in tech sales? So the thing is, like, a lot of the roles, it depends on what you're targeting, right, and what your current pay is. So if you're in mortgage sales and like you're consistently making 250K a year, although I know mortgages are pretty rough right now. But let's say like if your baseline is you don't want to make less than 250K a year. It's going to be pretty hard to land. What they do is they end up going into an SDR, BDR role, sales development representative, business development representative. And you typically make between 60 to 90K in your first year in that role. And if you're a top performer, you can get promoted within 12 to 18 months. And that gets you to like, 150K plus. And then, then of course it goes up a lot from there. But, so it kind of really depends on like what your salary expectations are. If you can take that big of a potential pay cut, that's usually the route that I recommend. If not, you're going to have to take a little bit of a different angle, a different approach to position yourself for an account executive position, which typically requires closing experience on the software side, which you're not going to have with only being in the mortgage industry. AWS is on LDR holds right now. Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the tech companies, what they do is they don't actually do like mass layoffs, the big tech companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Instead, what they do is they actually do hiring freezes, and then they potentially might end contracts early for contractors or temp workers. But for the full-time workers, you usually won't see them lay folks off because there's always some natural attrition where people are leaving for other positions, and or they're removed from the company for one reason or another. So what they'll do is they'll just do a hiring freeze, and they'll naturally kind of decrease the number of people on the sales team without having to lay people off. So great question, Dimitri. What do you see top performers do that others don't? So really what it comes down to is consistency. So what I've seen with like the top performers is they're constantly focused on like building their pipeline, and they don't neglect it. So we have a natural tendency to kind of like put things off. Prospecting isn't always fun. So oftentimes what I see people do, and I'm guilty of this myself sometimes as well, is like you put off doing your prospecting until like the end of the month or the end of the quarter, and then you're mostly focused on closing the opportunities that you have in your pipeline, right? But it's all like a numbers game. You need to have a lot of opportunities that get qualified out. It decreases over time. So if you get too focused on just closing deals, right, and you're not building your pipeline, you might have like a good, 1 or 2 quarters, but then that pipeline is going to dry up. And then because you weren't building it up on the back end, then it's going to make those following quarters more difficult until you catch up. So the top performing reps that I've seen, they're just very consistent. They know what their goal is. Let's say you have a $3 million annual quota, right? if you want to be a really good rep, you need to basically take that number and you need to translate that over into daily activity. So, if your average contract value, let's say, is $100,000 in ARR, and your quota is $3 million, that's 30 deals you need to close, right? So how many, what percentage of the leads that you're working on, how many of those actually convert to opportunities? How many of those opportunities actually close? And so you have to basically work that backwards into like how many emails and LinkedIn messages do you need to send out on a daily basis in order to hit that target. And if you can get down to that level, then it's really just about a numbers game, and it's about being consistent. And you'll find that you'll be hitting your quota much more consistently versus just trying to wing it. How is the work-life balance? So it's really up to you. One of the nice things with the role is that your hours are essentially the customer's hours. So customers are typically answering emails and calls from 9 to 5, their time, their local time. So what that means is, it doesn't really help you or make a difference if you're, putting in the time, doing outbound dialing past 5 o'clock or sending out emails, right? Because the customer is not going to respond to it. So it kind of like forces you to have those hours. But that said, some parts of the year will be more intensive. That can take up a lot of time. Depending on your territory, you could be doing a lot of traveling, or you could not be doing a lot of traveling. In my experience, when you're traveling, you fall behind on other work activities you need to do, and then you end up doing more than the 40 hours, especially like if you're traveling out to conferences. That's like a full day thing. Then you still got to do like your normal emails and follow-ups, and you're going to events with customers afterwards. So those can easily be like very, very busy days. But it really depends. It also kind of depends on like what types of accounts you're working on. So if you're covering SMB and you've got like 300 accounts in your territory, your volume is probably going to be a lot higher than someone who's only covering 1 or 3 key and strategic accounts. What steps should you take to be competitive as an intern applicant? Question. Yeah, and Dimitri answered it. Yeah, networking, get a referral. Refer your application, submit your resume. Even if you have like the prior tech sales experience, chances are no one's going to look at your resume, or if they do, they're going to just glance at it. Mostly because recruiters, they have a priority of like what applicants they're going to look at first. So, the first ones that they're going to be looking at. So recruiters are also doing prospecting. They're reaching out on LinkedIn. They're reaching out to potentially strong candidates that they think would do in the role that are already in a company, which makes sense because if you think about it, all of like the really good reps, they're already in a job, probably doing very well, right? So you have to convince them, you have to sell them on the position. That's what recruiters are, why they're paid to do their job. So those are the ones that they're prioritizing first. Next one that they're prioritizing are internal applicants or internal transfers, right? So for every posting that you see externally on LinkedIn, for example, there's an internal job board, and people potentially might be getting trying to get a promotion into that role, or doing a lateral transfer. So that's like the next priority. And then you've got applicants with referrals, right? So referrals, employees are incentivized to give referrals because companies know it's very hard to find quality applicants. So with referrals, they often give employees like a bonus. It could be anywhere from like $1,000 to like $4,000 if they refer a candidate who actually gets an offer and accepts the offer, right? So because of that, people are usually pretty happy to offer a referral if you ask for it. There's definitely some like an art to asking for referrals. Like you don't want to just go ahead and like message a bunch of people and immediately say like, hey, can you give me a referral? You want to, focus on people that have like some sort of common background with you. Maybe they went to the same school, they're from the same state, or you really enjoyed like their last, piece of content that they put out on LinkedIn, for example. And then you ask them for some time, ask them about their experience at that company, if they would recommend it, and then you ask for the referral there. But that's going to give you a huge, huge boost. I don't remember the exact data, but when I was at Google, they encouraged everyone to submit people for referrals, but I think I submitted like 50 people, only 2. So just because you get a referral does not mean you're a shoo-in, but it does increase your chances significantly. Like I think at Google it was like a 10x higher chance of getting an interview if your application was attached to a referral or not. So yeah, so it helps a lot there for sure. So hopefully that answers your question. And it also is especially helpful too if you don't have prior tech sales experience, right? So the referral almost kind of replaces what the cover letter used to be. So ideally, the person who's referring you knows about your background, and knows you personally, and they're able to kind of like vouch for you, and maybe even tell your story or help tell your story about why you're interested in tech sales. Because let's say like if you have, I don't know, if you only have experience on like the marketing side, and then you're all of a sudden applying for like a sales role, it might seem like maybe you're just applying to like random positions that are online. But instead, if you have a referral and you kind of like share your story, they might share that with the hiring manager if they reach out to them. Lady in the back, scary. I guess you're scaring people.
I'm sorry. They don't see me.
Okay, yes.
Where do I look?
You're okay. No, it's right here. Yes. Yes, this will be posted too. Do I upload the live stream anywhere? Yeah, so I upload it on YouTube, and then I'm currently trying to do multicasting. If you guys want to see like what I'm doing there, so let me see. So I'm also trying to like, let me see. Maybe I can't share it. But anyway, I'm using OBS. This is a new platform. I never was like a big live streamer, so this should be streaming to YouTube and Facebook Live at the same time. It's supposed to be doing Instagram too, but for some reason it won't let me log in. But yes, and this will be posted on YouTube. So I have like a playlist for the TikTok Live recordings. One of the things I want to do is there are tools to automatically get transcripts from video files. I'm evaluating a couple options. So as soon as I get that figured out, I'm going to update all the descriptions on the recorded TikTok lives, and because right now they're just posted basically as an hour-long recording without like timestamps or anything. But that's one of the things I want to do is basically there are some of the tools that I saw where it automatically puts in timestamps within the transcript, which is pretty cool. So you can easily go through and see if there's an interesting question and skip to that. But especially with these newer, higher quality lives here, so like this is with the Sony a7S III, so a 4K digital SLR. It's like, I don't know, like a $5,000 setup. So as opposed to this is like what it is from like the webcam, right? So not really too flattering. But yeah, with these higher quality streams, now I can actually use this content and break it up for TikTok. So super excited for that, because I got a lot of great questions on here, and there's so many of them where I think like, man, this was a great answer. I wish I could like just post this on TikTok. But the native TikTok recordings of these lives are just like garbage quality. So I'm recording this natively here. But yeah, her background for sure. Yeah, she has her doctorate in physical therapy. She's doing the stay-at-home right now, raising our two kids, 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. But I also thought about going to medical field for a while. I think I talked about that on a few of my videos. But if that's something that you're interested in, maybe I'll have her start posting more stuff on her Instagram, or do like a little interview thing. But yeah, there's let me see if this loads. There's like the two kids, right? So that's Erickson. He recently turned 1, and then Emerson is 4 years old. So they're a lot of fun. A7S III is a killer camera. Main body as a wedding video camera guy. Yeah, it's awesome. So I've got, right now I'm using like a Tamron. This one's the 2870 f2.8 lens. So actually I like it. The depth of field isn't like super deep, but it's pretty good. And then I also picked up like the 20 millimeter G lens with a 1.8 super wide angle. It doesn't really actually work great for like live streams, but for vlogging stuff works good. I'm not like I used to do more film stuff, and then this was a huge learning curve picking up on this, because I started pretty much just doing all my recording on the iPhone. So this is actually, well, I just upgraded to the new iPhone, but I was recording everything on the iPhone, editing it within the TikTok app, not even using anything else. And then now I'm try to record the nicer videos on this thing here. I got my external mics and then edited in Final Cut Pro. Just doing it myself, but that was one of the other positions that I kind of put out, is someone to do some content editing and content repurposing, because I want to really up the volume and then also post like across the other platforms too. Because I mostly only post on TikTok and then I'll cross post on Instagram, but I do want to do more cross posting on like Pinterest, maybe LinkedIn. I try to keep LinkedIn, maybe a little bit of a different focus, but cross posting on like Pinterest, YouTube Shorts, and then Reels. Those are the main ones. Yeah, and it's all done by myself. So, I think I remember I saw like Alex Hermosi or whatever. He was talking recently about like him and his wife, they each pay like $60,000 each for like people to shoot and edit their content, and that's like, I mean, they make a lot. I guess they said they make a pretty good return on it, but for me, treating this as like a hobby, and then kind of just bootstrapping it and then reinvesting it. So as soon as basically got some sponsorships, basically took that money and then put it into all the camera equipment, use that as a write-off, and then keep growing this and see how that see where that goes. My opinion on course careers. Do you think it will give you the ability to break into tech sales? So I mean, I looked at the material. Honestly, it's pretty much the same stuff that I talk about, same types of questions. It's not really rocket science to get into the entry-level role. Really what you need to do is, the biggest thing is, a lot of people don't know what they need to apply for. They have no background in the tech industry. And, it's no fault of their own. Like, as opposed to like software engineering, where there's a lot of like material out there, there really isn't a lot of stuff on like the non-engineering side of tech. So I myself kind of stumbled into the industry. Both my parents, immigrated from Poland. Didn't know any English, had any money. I went to public schools, state schools. I didn't know anyone in the tech industry. Didn't even know tech paid that much in general for software engineers, let alone on the sales side. So I basically, taking everything that I've learned, love answering these questions, helping people out. And then, so I've posted a lot on it, and I have like my Get Into Tech Sales playlist with, with just that, people have gotten into entry-level roles. Like I get messages almost daily from people saying like, hey man, been following you for several months, finally broke in, thank you, didn't realize this was even a career, or what to even like look for and what to do. So you can get in with just that. Personally, I don't think the value is there for how much they're charging. I think they're charging like, it's like $600 or $150 for 4 payments. I would take that money and use it for like a resume editing service or a LinkedIn editing service. Like that's going to get you more results, in my opinion, than like the material that you're going to get in that thing. And I respect the hustle. I don't like to kind of talk bad about other people's businesses, but there's a couple things you need to look at when you're deciding if you're going to pay for a course or not. And I talked about that in one of my recent posts. You need to look at what's the actual background of the person, right? What companies have they worked for? Do they actually have success in the career that they're creating courses on? Did they actually get to like the enterprise account executive position, or were they only an SDR, right? So I think for that one, the guy maybe only had like a year's experience as like an SDR or AE at like, not even like, I wouldn't even necessarily classify it as like a tech company, let alone like getting to like enterprise software, right? So where deal sizes, in my opinion, enterprise, it needs to be 300K plus for deal sizes, and that's on the low end. If it's like anything less than that, it's it's more transactional sales. But anyway, long story. Look at the background of the person. I think there is a place to pay for like very specialized courses. Let's say, if you do want to develop some very specific sales skills and you want to get to that next level, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of that's why you have like paid courses from like Challenger Sale, right? When I was at Google, they paid. We did like a 2-day workshop that was run by the people who developed the Challenger sales methodology, and they custom developed it for our sales process. Sure, they paid like several thousands per salesperson to do that thing. That, I think makes more sense. But for the stuff where it's like very entry level, where there's a lot of free information out there, and if you're not getting like specific like coaching or anything like that, personally, I think there's better ways to use your money, especially early on in your career. So hopefully that helps. I know it's a bit of a long-winded answer. Okay. Hey, bro, moved into a technical pre-sales role because of you. That's awesome, man. So pre-sales is fun. I've done it a couple times. Cybersecurity and fintech has its pros and cons. I think it's a great role, especially if you come from like a technical background. If you're like a software engineer and you want to break into tech sales, or you're thinking about you want to move to the sales side, that's like almost always the path that I recommend. Appreciate the thorough answers, always providing so much value. Have a great night. Thanks, Dimitri. Thanks again for hopping on. Thanks again for subbing. Again, I'll follow up with you after the fact. What do you think about Smartsheet? I'm actually I'm a pretty big fan of like Smartsheet and like the whole like no code movement, right? So like, you know, Airtable and so on. I think we're gonna be seeing, you know, a lot more growth within that space, especially because those tools are getting more and more powerful. Like what you're able to do with those types of tools compared to like 10 years ago is pretty incredible. So I'll have to look on my LinkedIn to see if I know anyone at Smartsheet. I used to know someone that was there when I was working at Google. They were one of the partners I was working with, and they seem to be doing pretty well.
Nick asked this twice. Is it possible to get tech sales job with no degree but HRPO sales experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the degrees don't matter. So all the big tech companies, they don't have their degree requirements anymore. One of the best like sales reps that I knew, he didn't have a college degree. He did like he ran a food truck, his own food truck for like 8 years or whatever. And then he moved into tech sales, and I was working with him at the fintech. We were selling a pretty complex like machine learning solution for like credit underwriting, and he was able to adapt, you know, really well. So past like the entry level role, where if you're getting your first job, your degree might help a little bit, you know, kind of give you that credibility. But past that, it really doesn't matter, you know, at all. Different question. Final update. Yeah, on the Tesla got wrecked. So the Tesla did get totaled. At first, it was like a $5,000 estimate, and then they did a teardown, and they saw that the firewall had a slight dent in it, and because of that, they said it was a non-serviceable part because it's all part of like the frame and the unibody. So it automatically went to totaled. They gave us an option to either just get paid out or do a buyback. I had to do negotiating a little bit back and forth because I think they valued it like 10 grand or 15 grand lower than it should have been, because ours had like full self-driving. But they ended up settling at like 95K, which was, you know, pretty good. And they gave us an option of either buying it back, and the buyback price I think was like 40,000, or just getting like the full cash. I'm still on the fence if I'm going to buy it back or not, because I think I could potentially fix it for like 5 grand. But it might just not be worth the trouble. And then also just wait. I'm still waiting on the title actually to get back from Texas. But yeah, we did pick up the Plaid, which is awesome. Got that. I think it's been like 4 weeks or so, and it's incredible. It's like the finish, the fit and finish is like night and day compared to the old car. The old X we had a 2019. Honestly, it was pretty dated. Pretty much the same car from like same as like the Model S from like 2013. But it's incredible. It's like 1,000 horsepower. Super comfortable, way less road noise, has like active noise cancellation. You know, yeah, it's nuts.
Bryce asks, the second time he asked, do you recommend starting with an internship or permanent job off the start?
Oh yes, so Bryce, I assume that you are still in college. So I mean, if you're in college, absolutely. So that's one of the things that if I could go back, I might have done differently. Is I would have more aggressively pursued partnerships or internships. What I did in my summers was actually I was helping out my parents with their family business. They had a small trucking business. So maybe it's not like a big regret, but it definitely did make it harder for me to get my first role out of college without having that internship experience. So if you're in college, definitely get those internships. There are some programs some companies that do offer like paid internships. So I think like Vendition, I think they do like a paid apprenticeship or paid internship where I think it's like 3 months and they pay you like $3,500 a month or whatever to kind of go through their boot camp or whatever, and then you're doing the SDR role, and then ideally what they're trying to do is they're trying to convert that to a full-time position. So you also act as a recruiting agency almost, because the way that recruiters get paid is if they find a candidate and they place them in a role, they get a placement fee paid by the company. usually it's like 1 or 2 months of their first year salary. So that's kind of like that model that they're doing. What do you think about Oracle's business development consultant program? So Oracle I think is a pretty good company, especially to start out in tech sales and even potentially grow your career. They basically invented enterprise software sales, that whole model. So a lot of experience within that space, and because of that, they have very extensive like internal training and training and development. So even if you only stay there for like 2 years, you're going to learn a lot. And having Oracle on your resume will definitely be like a green flag for future hiring managers, because they know that you've learned like proper sales process, and you're able to hopefully take that to the to the new organization. Oh, not enrolled in college, single mom, 2 sisters in college, avoiding debt. Yeah, so I mean they do have like some paid apprenticeships. Not too many. A lot of them tend to be focused for college applicants. But take a look at Vendition, I think. I'm going to double check. I'm pretty sure that's the one where they do actually like a paid one. You do have to apply, and they do an interview process because especially because they're paying you. So that's where even like doing like my free course could potentially position you pretty well to like pass the interview and get one of these paid apprenticeships. So that's essentially what they're doing. There were a few people I think that were on my Discord that went through it, and they had like a relatively positive experience. So paid apprenticeships are always great, as opposed to some of these other boot camps where like they do the opposite. They make you pay to get a job, which in most cases you shouldn't have to do that, unless it's something very specialized. Like if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, there's no way around it. You're gonna have to like pay for your education. But for something like this, for this role, definitely not needed. Do I still make cold calls? No. Well, actually, no. I still do. Not as much though, because I've built kind of like a network of connections. I utilize that a lot more than actual kind of cold calling.
Is Chicago a good place for tech sales?
I wouldn't say it's like the best, but it's up there. There's a good number of startups out here in Chicago. It does not nearly like the same type of startup scene that you would have like in San Francisco or New York or even like Austin, for example. But it is like a major city, and Chicago tends to be like a central hub for a lot of sales organizations. Like they'll have like a West Coast team, an East Coast team, and a Central team too. And then someone said like you have a free course. Yes. So let me pull it up so you guys can see. So it's called Tech Sales U. It's in my bio. You can go ahead. It's like the top link. Oops. Let me pull that up and I'll do the screen share so we can all see together at one time. Let's see. So hopefully this works. Okay. Cool. So here it is. So it's free to sign up. Decided, we went through different business models, thought about like charging for it, but I'd rather just make it free. I'm more focused on like my longer term partnerships and stuff anyway. So you don't need to know anything. Basically go through and teach the basics. I spent several months working on the curriculum. I did all the recording, a lot of it in my home studio, and then also in Los Angeles with the rest of the Bravado team and Corporate Bro. And they also have like a program, or we're doing an incentive where if you go through the program and you get a job, because Bravado has a job board feature, if you get a job, you get $1,000 cash bonus actually paid directly by Bravado. So super exciting. We just launched the alpha. We're going to be collecting a lot of like early feedback from people. Early feedback. And then we'll be using that to improve the course. And hopefully I'll be creating more, actually, for more like the advanced sales skills. So I really enjoyed it. I'm not very good at like memorizing lines. So that was like a big challenge. Like I wrote out like these long scripts. But I did discover some like, pretty nifty teleprompter setups. Maybe I'll do a video on it. It's like a angled mirror. Attached on the camera. I had a little iPad, and it actually made it way easier to read through these scripts, because I cannot memorize lines. I would be a terrible actor. When we were in Los Angeles shooting some of these skits for the course, I struggled with like memorizing like 4 sentences or whatever. They had to do so many takes. I felt bad, but because they had a whole production team out there. But yeah, funny story.
Several people are asking about at what point you start working in a startup. When's the best time in your career to work at a startup?
Yeah, so my opinion, best time would be if you're in tech sales, the best time would be once you get to the account executive level and you have like 1 or 2 years of solid closing experience and you're very comfortable with running your own territory and running your own sales processes. That might be a good time to jump to a startup, right? So some startups will give you, additional training and mentoring, but for the most part, you should expect not a lot. And so because of that, you should have some of those foundational skills built up first and to be comfortable and be ready to hit the ground from day one. Have some of your connections and your network built out so you can leverage that for getting intros to companies. And you don't have to go to the startup route either. You can definitely stay at like the big tech companies. You can go ahead and you can look on LinkedIn. Like people will stay at places like Microsoft and Amazon for like 10 plus years. And there's nothing wrong with that because especially if you're getting promoted, you're getting to the senior levels, and you're making like a easy, $400K a year plus, it can be a hard sell to go from that to a startup, right? How long is the course? So I have it set for, it was like five weeks. I think we had it at 6 and then I cut it down a little bit. It's not super in depth, to be honest. Like each week we have it broken down into pre-recorded lessons that you can go ahead and play. They're broken down into various sub lessons for each week. I think it ranges between about 20 minutes of content, I think, per week. But then there's also quizzes within there, and there's also like exercises. And so we're basically taking that, what you learn there, testing your knowledge, and then applying it with some exercises, and then you're able to peer grade your assignments. So we have that feature kind of built out with like the Slack community, and the purpose of it is to really prepare you for those interviews that you're going to have for to become an SDR or a BDR, right? They're not going to expect you to be sales experts or experts on the tech industry, but you do want to have that foundational knowledge. So this course is aimed for people who are trying to get that first job. So if you're already like in tech sales, doing well as an SDR, you're probably not going to get too much out of it. I mean, you can still check it out if you want, but really it's aimed for people that are trying to get that first role. They don't know anything, so you're going to be able to get that baseline level of knowledge. And then also some of the exercises are especially going to be aimed at like helping you during the actual application process. So like one of the exercises, for example, is related to like writing email templates. Another one is working on your LinkedIn profile or working on your resume, right? So it's supposed to be like as relevant as possible. And because it's free, I'm not trying to like fill it up with like a bunch of fluff or whatever. I think I saw one of them. I was looking through it just as I was researching the space. They had like 30 hours of material, but like it's way more in depth than you actually need for that entry level role. So these were great questions, everyone. I know we started a little bit late, but I think it's about like an hour into it. So really enjoyed it. As mentioned earlier, this will be posted on either on Instagram or is comment on my most recent TikTok video. Even if it's not directly related to tech sales, like sometimes I'll post like a random Tesla video or post your comment on there. And I'm trying my best from an engagement perspective on my content, so really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. I do these and then I'll be on next Wednesday at 9 p.m. as well.